Welcome to the next episode of Brandland. I am your host, Garrett Justice, and I am joined by a very special guest today, Garrett Mehrguth. And of course, one of the guests with the best first name possible, I think. Garrett, how are you doing today?
Great. Excited to chat with you. And looking forward to being a part of your audience and your community and hopefully adding a little value today. So excited to be here.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's unique to find another Garrett out there, not only another Garrett, but someone that spells it the same way too. So You and I were chatting about that before we jumped on today. We gotta be that change in the world, right? Help people understand the power of the Garretts, right?
No, I love it. 100%, man. 100%.
All right. Well, Garrett is the CEO at Directive, a performance marketing and for performance marketing for SaaS companies, right? So Garrett, before we jump into that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and your company?
Yeah. So I started the company with my best friend. He joined really early. What was it? So I was in college. I did my degree in like 3 years. I did my master's to fourth and wanted to go into consulting. So I kind of applied to all the consulting firms, got an auto response saying no. And I was like, all right. So when you go to apply to consulting firms, and I think this is probably the same in really large corporate environments, they have their own application portals. And you have to select your university. And my university wasn't on the list. No one tells you that in the admissions office. So from that experience, I decided, hey, I'm just gonna build my own consulting firm. And I've always believed that perception is reality. So what do people perceive you're good at? I was like, oh, I'm young. People with money, they think I know the internet. I should go learn the internet. And so from that, just kind of taught myself how to build WordPress websites, how to do basic little marketing stuff. And so got our first account, or my first account at the time. My partner hadn't joined yet. And it was a shawarma shop. And helped him get a Facebook page, flyers, really kind of basic stuff. And from that turned into essentially my first client. But then at the 30th day mark, he said, come back and get your check. So I came back and the whole place was boarded up. So I was the very first ever client. I don't even remember how much I charged him because I didn't remember to put amount on the contract. I didn't know what I was doing. And then from there, I started on Fiverr. So I was selling social media calendars and databases, and then got a hookah shop, ranked him #1 for hookah. I taught myself SEO. I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. So he was #1 for hookah in his area in LA. And I was like, all right. So my best friend, this one I went to him, his dad had a plumbing business, asked him for it. Did a proposal. He's like, yeah, sure. It was $250 a month or something. Mm-hmm. And ranked him #1. I was like, this is dope, man. You got to come join me. So we kind of started from that point. I brought him on. We got a bunch of small accounts. And then I think 3 years later, we got Allstate. And then got some other large accounts. Kind of from there, just started growing. It was pretty fun, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, kind of how it started. And my background, I just kind of went into this and taught myself. I read a lot, try to figure it out.
I love that. Kind of self-taught, learn through experience mentality. I think that there's a lot of marketers out there who are in that same boat trying to figure out how to do it. So love that. I think that that's one of the most important things you can do today to continue to keep your skills up is just listening to other people out there, reading and trying it, right?
100%. I mean, the thing is the good part about not being classically trained is you don't feel as a marketer that someone has to teach you something. And so I feel that allows you to innovate. Especially, now Directive does SEO and PPC for software companies, for SaaS businesses. And learning a whole space, and every client's industry is different, and some sell to developers, some don't. Some do free onboarding, some do paid onboarding, some do free trials, some only do demos, right? There's so many different nuances and understanding that and how it works and why. As long as you can keep learning, I think there's a lot of areas to become great, whatever you want to commit yourself to.
It's awesome. Well, I'm excited to jump into our topic today, Garrett. As we chatted about what we should talk about today, you kind of proposed this idea of, the art of making your brand discoverable on search engines. And it sounds like, that's the sweet spot of what your company does for similar technology companies is how do you make that brand discoverable? How do you help people learn about these companies, so ultimately that they buy by leveraging some of those SEO or PPC channels. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think one of the gaps, right, is the legacy thinking, especially amongst marketers, is that your website is like the most important asset. It's like you got to rank your website. You got to do this. How many people are going to your website? How many MQLs do you get from your website? Everything's about your website. The truth is that your website is not necessarily gonna rank at the bottom of the funnel in 2020 anymore. Like right now, with the way purchase intent works and all these things, is it's difficult to position yourself at the bottom of the funnel and do really well.
Mm-hmm.
It with just your website. Like if you know, like even at Lucid Chart, right? If you guys do like org chart software, let's say something like that, Capterra, G2, Software Advice, GetApp, PC Mag, whatever it is, those third-party review sites are ones that show up. And so you have to start getting really creative about how you think about positioning your brand. And that's kind of what we help people do.
Love that. And I think that kind of leads into our first question. So, before we jumped on here, you and I were talking about how the traditional marketing funnel is broken. Can you help explain that a little bit more? Why do you feel like that is?
Well, I think so many people are taking all the principles of like, hey, well, first you need to drive awareness. And then from that, you need to do this. But that's assuming that consumers can't discover their own information. And so I think what happens is that what's most broken right now is that people think some really flawed hypotheses around how people buy from software companies digitally. And so what I mean by that is everybody's like, well, we really need to, our ideal customer persona, like for you guys, they'd be like, well, our ideal customer persona is the CEO. Or on your Lucidpress, like our customer persona is the CMO. But what they don't know is that's not like CMOs aren't just like filling out forms and taking demos. That's not actually how the game works. The CMO goes, cool, hey, we need to really solve this brand templating problem we have because we don't have any consistency across our brand assets, and onboarding people's a nightmare and no one can identify what it is and they're totally fragmented and half the time we're on brand, half the time we're not. Mm-hmm. And they go to their brand manager and they say, hey, can you go out there and get me 3 quotes? I want to look at 3 different tech products. I'm really concerned about price, but obviously quality. So why don't you go get me 3, then bring your favorite 2 to me? That's actually how they buy. And so what has happened is awareness has got replaced with valuation. And so the first thing people do now is they say, oh, cool, let me see what's out there. And they start to search things. And when they search things, they search by category. So it's so important in SaaS is there's always people who talk about category creation, but there's not enough people who talk about category positioning. And so what you do, right, is you say, cool, what do people think we offer? And then how do I position that to be discovered? And then once it's discoverable, how do I make myself differentiated from everyone else so that I'm more desirable to the right people and less desirable to the wrong people? And when you put that all together, now that's the new marketing funnel. And it's really, really special.
Love that. Yeah, I think that that's totally true. I think that sometimes we get away from the actual way that people buy and instead focus just on optimizing our tactics. So I like the unique perspective there. So tell me a little bit more about this though. I mean, I know that there's probably a lot of marketing leaders out there who would say, oh, hey, brand awareness or discoverability, right? That just seems like a waste of time or money, or a way that, our marketing team can do something, but not necessarily have any like strong KPIs tied to it. So leaders who are out there who might have, a thought about that, what do you feel like they're missing? And what advice would you give to them as they try and move down this path that you described to this new marketing?
Yeah, well, I think, they go hand in hand. It's not that you don't need awareness anymore. There's a couple things to awareness that I think are really important. I think they all go back to this idea of control though. And we as executives, professionals, marketers, we love control. We want to control how our ideal customer persona sees us, perceives us, finds us. And we think we have all this control. And if you let go of control and say, well, what is it that they want? What is it that they do? And how can I be a part of that? I call this the 3-tab test. So when someone's doing their research and they got 3 tabs open, you don't try to be the only tab. You try to be one of the 3 tabs and then win when you should and you lose when you should too. And if you get real with yourself and then start to understand that you don't have to be in control, but you have to be wise, then it helps, right? And then that allows you to think about brand awareness, right? So to answer your question, I think the most effective way to think about brand advertising is saying, how much money am I willing to lose to never stop doing it? Okay. And so the reason it's so important is what I find is so many marketers and executives treat brand advertising like it's lead generation. And so they want similar things out of it. They're like, well, what's the ROI? Well, the sad news today, let me just tell you guys, impression-based pixels all the way through your funnel to moments of ROI is going to be codependent on two things. Number one, your sales cycle. I found most people who do brand advertising don't do brand advertising, even the length of their average deal size. So it could have never worked in the first place, number one. Number two, brand advertising isn't as attributable as you want it to be. I have full bidirectional sync. I have every attribution software in the game. I was on Visible like 3-4 years ago, like trying to do it all. It still isn't there. Like the tech stack isn't there. So the question is, how much money are you willing to lose to never stop doing it? And if you can set your budget there, what I find is you actually end up as a brand because you're the only one who advertised for long enough. And so that's one thing. The other thing too is like shockingly memorable. I have this thing around advertising that should be shockingly memorable. Display advertising is so noisy and ignored right now. And most B2B companies don't have the confidence, let's use that word, to actually say something that could have a hater. Like everyone's so scared of haters that they also have no fans. And so if you're willing to be somewhat polarizing, in other words, stand for something or make something commonly held as true in your industry the enemy, and do it in a creative way that's engaging and exciting, your brand advertising probably is not going to work either. So first off, it has to be shockingly memorable. And then the second off, it has to be going on long enough to actually matter. And then you just got to never stop. And as long as you keep doing that, you're innovating it, and it's a small part of your budget, and you're not saying how many MQLs did I get from it, what I get from it, and you're just saying, hey, I'm going to tell a story that I believe in, that our customers believe in, that's shockingly memorable, and I'm going to never stop. Now you can do brand advertising.
Cool. I love it. So I want to ask a follow-up question to that, more on like a tactical level. Okay. Let's say you have, someone on your team who's responsible for, running your paid advertising across all different platforms. How are they going to know they're successful in this? What metrics should they be looking at when it comes to this brand awareness, brand advertising, to really know how to continue to optimize and know when they're successful?
Yeah, so on the B2B SaaS side, which we do mostly, like we use Terminus. And so we'll take a tiered accounts, right? So we'll work with, let's say, sales development in the organization and say, cool, what accounts are you going after? Be like, oh, okay, we got these 5,000 accounts. These are companies with over 1,000 seats, with these titles who we know are already using this competitor product, and we want them to switch sometime in the next 36 months. Cool, that's a good scope. So then you go out there, you build those out, you get those accounts into Terminus, and then you can see things like visiting accounts. So you can deliver impressions to, let's say, 75% of your total addressable market. I found that to be pretty average right now. But then how many of those impressions do you turn into visits? So that's a really cool way. So the way I, like right now internally, what I measure is how many customer stories have we told? Kind of a cool leading indicator, right? Because a lot of times marketing is all about us. Here's what we do for you, instead of here's what we did for our customer. Because you want the person you're selling to have an imagination, right? You want them to come alive and to read the stories of people with similar titles who are in similar situations, and then not what you did for that account, but what you did for that person. So what did you do for the point of contact at that? So it's like you start to believe that if they work with you, something similar can happen to them. And ideally, it does, right? Like you have to actually be able to deliver on that promise, but your marketing needs to be about making your ideal customer persona the hero, and your customers have to tell their stories. So one of the things we track is how many customer stories we've told, and the other one's like how many of our target accounts have we engaged with. And so those are things I'm kind of measuring from the brand awareness. Is still putting it from one level deeper into the account level and say, cool, how many accounts have we engaged with? And now it's really hard to say incrementally, if we didn't do this, we wouldn't have got this account, or we did because of it. But it still gives you a benchmark to say, here's who we've at least seen this ad, went to our website, and engaged with us.
Yeah, that's great. And do you see, I mean, are there certain sizes of companies that you work with in terms of clients where you see that like if they spend a certain amount, they're going to increase, the number of web forms across their website, for example, and when they stop spending, they see that go down. Like, does that matter on size of company, do you think? And have you seen that at all with customers that you've worked with?
Yeah, so we do what's called LTV CAC modeling. So a lot of the finance departments at SaaS companies run on LTV CAC models. Okay. And so what we do is we'll build LTV CAC models full funnel into their ecosystem. So we'll look at your MQL to SQL ratio, your SQL to op ratio, your op to deal ratio, average order value, gross margin, LTV, and then we'll actually calculate your LTV CAC. And then what I found is the biggest value you can add in the short term to any marketing organization in the world is their capital allocation. It's hard to rebrand. It's hard to change how people who've known you for 10 years in the marketplace now see you. It's hard to get great at content when you've been bad at content. It's hard to do almost anything in the short term in marketing except spend your money better. And so, like, let's say you're in a Google Ads account. Google Ad account runs on what's called search impression share, depending on how much money you can spend for anything. And you can lose it due to rank, and you can lose it due to budget. So we'll look at search impression share loss to budget. What happens a lot of times, you have a small mid-market organization with 4 different product managers, 4 different product marketing managers, and they all think their product is the best, right? And they all want to spend. Yet some of the products have better gross margins. Some of the products have better close rates. Some of the products have higher average order values. And so if you start all your advertising from the financials, then blend that with your vision of whatever the executive team is and where you want to be in 3 years, you look at it all, maybe you say, cool, we're only going to advertise on Google Ads 2 of the products, not 4, because currently you're only getting 30% search impression share across all 4, and it takes us 6 months to learn anything to get 100 clicks per keyword to turn one on or off. And so the second you start getting really smart with how you spend your money down to the very lowest level, and then you put that all back into financial modeling that any CFO in the world would be like, damn, that's really good. Mm-hmm. Now you're in the 1% of SaaS advertisers in the world. And that's where we really try to help our clients get to.
It's awesome. Cool. Well, I love talking about the theory about this and the why behind it, but I want to get into some of the tactics, right? So if someone's out there listening and they want to get started with this, how do they actually go about doing it? How do you really focus on becoming discoverable in search as a brand, whether that's across, PPC or display or SEO? Like, what are some tactics that someone can try to really start down this path?
Yeah, I think the first step is taking your shoes off and putting your customers on. I think so often we just haven't done it. Like, I would argue that if we got marketers listening here, most of them haven't called their customers and really heard what their customers said and hey, how did you, I just got here. How did you buy from us? What made you choose us over the competition? Hey, we say this is our number 1 value prop. What do you think it is? And a lot of the times we just don't have that information. So first, getting that information, number 1. But number 2 is being really honest. Like, honesty, humility, and putting your customer first are the greatest strengths as marketers, right? Because if I'm real, right, and I'm like, cool, I'm going to search top org chart management software. And I search that, and Lucidchart, which it doesn't have, but has 3 out of 5 stars, doesn't show up anywhere, and every other competitor has Google Ads and is on every review site, and I'm not, how am I really the market leader in this moment? So, and then you have to ask yourself, knowing this, if I could choose anybody, would I truly choose us? Am I truly the best? Mm-hmm. And then, with people forget in software, for example, is the quality of your product is driven perception-wise by the quality of your website. In other words, if you have a bad-looking website, nobody's like, oh my God, the product backend must be even better. Right? That's not how brains work. So if you stay really humble around this tactically, you just have to start searching for yourself. Best way to map out future org chart, right? You start query searching, you're like, cool, do we have any great information? Oh, we have an article on this. You read your article and you're like, dang, no lie, that's not that great. I don't think if I shared that on social and people read it, they'd think I personally was smarter. Okay, let's be real about our content. Well, we're trying to do 10 pieces. What if we just did 3 and all 3 were good enough that if you read it, you were more likely to work with us than before you read it? I can tell you, I'm guilty of this. I bet you if you read half the content on our own website, half of it wouldn't make you more willing to work with us than the other half. And that's what we're solving right now, right? And if you can be real about your own issues and hey, sometimes I write content that doesn't make us more compelling. I should stop doing that, right? Like you get really real. That's where I think tactically your tactics come from, is putting your customer front and center, staying humble, challenging everything. And that's when you get, those ideas and those tactics and those moments.
Love that. I think those are excellent tips. So give me some examples though of some other things. Once you've done that with a lot of your clients, what are some other common tactics that you implement to help these brands become more discoverable?
Well, the discoverability part at the end of the day is like, you have to ask, like, these are our bottom of funnel queries where we know there's purchase intent. When someone searches this, they're likely to want a demo. Mm-hmm. Cool. Do we show up on Google Ads? Yes. Do we show up on every review site? Yes. Are there news sites that have Google's display network? Are we there? Yes. Could we show up organically? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, cool. So that's discoverable. Now the question from there is, when they discover you, what's your offer? And this is the most important part of advertising. So you say request a demo. Cool. So what are people's hypothesis around demos? Huge amounts of what we call psychological friction. It's going to take an hour of my time. I'm still probably not going to get price. It's with a junior level SDR. All I want to know is how much does it cost to solve my problem? And you're like, no, bro, let me do an intro call. We'll get to a proposal. And 3 years later, you'll get a price. And so if you can't be real and be like, cool, what if we recorded our best demo generically from our top AE, and then we gated the proposal, but we did watch demo video. So like what we do with our clients is we'll come in, we'll change it from request a demo to watch free demo video, still gated, still goes to SDRs, but now when the prospect gives you their information, they get something more valuable, right? What happens when someone gives you their information right now? What do they get? Thank you. Someone from our team will reach out within 48 business hours, right? And then you're like, okay, cool. Or do they get a 5-minute demo video where they're like, oh my God, yes. And then they take notes, they show up on the call and they're like, hey, I had a question about this feature on the product. Now your SDR loves you, you're moving down the funnel. So I think really understanding the offer is a critical part of this whole thing.
Love it. This is so awesome. Well, Garrett, this has been such a great, informative conversation today. I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on here and share some of your insights with us. Final question for you as we kind of wrap up here. And I know you shared some ideas of things that people can do to kind of start down this path, but for all of our listeners out there who are just intrigued by this and want to start making progress and momentum on it, what's one thing that you would recommend that those people do today to help really move them towards success?
Yeah. Fill out our form? No. I actually, I love to do this. So I love helping, to be completely honest. Like I really do love doing this. So I actually record a video every day called 2 Minutes of SaaS. If you want like just 2 minutes of your time watching a video where you get challenged to think maybe about something differently or get a new idea, I do them every day. Just follow me on Twitter, check it out on LinkedIn. They're pretty cool videos. We talk about retargeting today. Like so many people in SaaS, they all want to do retargeting, right? So someone goes to your website, they leave. The goal is to get them back. But I can't tell you how many people retarget to a gated asset that nobody wants or the homepage. In other words, like someone goes to your website, they land on the homepage, they don't like it, they leave, you send them ads, and you send them right back to the page they didn't like in the first place. Like literally, like everyone does this. Or it's like the 7 deadly sins of ETL software or the 7 deadly sins of cybersecurity software. And the content isn't frankly that good. And you're like, it's not working. It's like, well, yeah, like it wasn't good enough. And so I think the honest truth, Garrett, is we don't need more tactics. We need more depth. A lot of the stuff you're doing could work if it didn't suck. And I happen to have the same issue. Like, I can't tell you how many times I stopped doing something because I didn't think it worked for me. And I didn't spend enough time diving into it myself. My team was like, oh, this doesn't work. And I never really gave it attention. I go read it. I'm like, well, yeah, no, duh, it didn't work. Like, it wasn't very good. Like, we could be better than this. Let's go deeper. Right? And I think if you just stay really real with yourself and you stay honest and you're like, cool, I'm going to go read 3 other assets from 3 other companies. And I'm like, no, that one sucked. That one sucked. Damn, that was really good. You're like, cool, that's a standard. And so then you got to make sure you're better than that, right? And so, like, to me, like, people want to write articles to rank for SEO, yet they're not concerned with what happens if they actually rank and someone reads it. Like, what occurs, right? I can tell you how easy it is to get more traffic. It's not that easy to get more organic MQLs and to get more organic MQLs per visit. In other words, you have increasing marginal returns from a channel or decreasing marginal returns. So really, if you want to get better, I think you just got to go deeper with everything you're doing, challenge it, read a lot, enjoy it, have fun with the whole process of getting better. And then eventually your marketing stands out.
Love it. Great advice. Garrett, thanks again for taking the time to jump on this call today. This has been super informative. If there are listeners who want to get in contact with you or have follow-up questions, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're active on LinkedIn, I'm active there. Twitter, LinkedIn, probably, or shoot us an email. We'd love to chat. And we have a free SaaS community. So it's called Society, free Slack group, really active, like genuinely really active. And we just help for free. Any questions you have, like, hey, how do I increase MQLs? Here's my exact situation. We'll help. We got a bunch of really sharp people in there. The community is exceptionally sharp. We have another thing called Institute. It's $99. Teaches you how we do everything. 40 hours of video, templates, spreadsheets, videos, walkthrough, quizzes. You'll get certified. So really anything you want to help, we're trying to support the community of SaaS marketers the best we can.
Love it. We'll have to check out some of those awesome resources. Garrett, thanks again for your time. Hope you have a great rest of the day.
All right. Thanks, Garrett.
Talk to you later.